Welcome to the Relocated South African, a show for navigating immigration from South Africa for a better future. Today I want to welcome Siobhan Erasmus, who lives in Valencia, Spain with her family. Welcome, Siobhan.
Thank you very much.
And judging by the spelling of your name, you must be Irish.
Irish, yes, from my mother's side. She was from Tipperary, so it's real Irish.
Okay, awesome. And were you born in South Africa?
No, I was actually born in London, in Ealing, London, and moved to South Africa when I was 9 in 1976.
Okay, cool. So do you have South African citizenship as well? Or just
yes, I'm a naturalized South African citizen, and I spent 40 plus years of my life in South Africa. So I'm essentially South African.
Okay, I hear you. I understand where you're coming from. And when did you decide to leave South Africa?
We decided to leave in 2018 following a home invasion, but we took 3-ish years to get it all together. You know, we didn't want to make any knee-jerk decisions and do something we would regret. So we took our time to plan it. And then, of course, COVID and lockdown delayed us by a year. And we've been here then since 2021.
Okay, so you actually only left after COVID, because we actually left South Africa in October 2020. Kind of planned it all during COVID, so it was quite a mission, but I can imagine. So 2021, what you obviously said what prompted you to leave was a home invasion, which I think is a story that a lot of South Africans share. But how did you get to Spain, interestingly?
Well, I was born in the UK to an English dad and an Irish mother. So I have a British passport, I have an Irish passport, and I was naturalized South African, and I have a South African passport. And the choices were England, Ireland, or somewhere in Europe. Mm-hmm. And my husband, being the quintessential South African, bright lace, rugby, and short Gilbert shorts, would not survive in either Ireland or England. So we said, where does the sun shine the same as it does at home? And we ended up in Valencia.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it is a beautiful city. That's for sure. And I know that your husband produces very, very good biltong because we've bought from him. So.
Yes, well, I mean, kind of naively, we came following the sun. We did a little bit of research in terms of property and understanding the lie of the land and all that sort of thing. But we didn't know enough about, the decision to move to Valencia as such. We didn't realize the language would be quite so tricky later in life. And obviously, I mean, we have our little business, as you say. Wayne makes a bit of biltong for the South African expats, but we spend majority of our time at home, alone, working together. So we're disconnected. So we don't get enough connection with the locals. So that's one of the downsides. We wanted to make sure that we lived somewhere comfortable and sunny and warm and similar to home, so it wasn't too traumatic being away from what we knew. And in doing so, we kind of isolated ourselves a little bit. So, yeah, as much as we planned, we didn't plan enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is part of why we do this podcast, to share these stories, because I think that's quite important. You mentioned the language. Do you find that that's holding you back?
Yes and no. It holds you back if you want to integrate into the local community, because it's only really the youth, this generation of Spaniards, and maybe one before, that actually learn English within their school, or their families send them to English-speaking schools so that English becomes like a second language to them, as well as everything else. I mean, they're so blessed in Europe. They get a choice of French and German and Italian and everything throughout their schooling. But a lot of them go to English schools. They go to the Cambridges and the British schools of Valencia and that kind of thing. And those younger people do speak quite a bit of English, but the older generation don't. And I don't know if it's a European thing or if it's just a worldwide cultural thing. People are not really in their comfort zones when they're not speaking their home tongue, their birth language. So the local Valencians are, I don't know if it's stubborn or shy, much the same as we are trying to speak Spanish, just certainly not stubborn, but mortified, trying to speak it. So, yeah, you can't get into the culture if you don't speak the language, and it takes a lot of effort. And working at home alone, you therefore have to make the extra effort to get out there and learn it. So it can be very lonely. I mean, I think we were a full year here before we actually spoke to another human being that was a friend rather than a shopkeeper or the postman or the lady at the supermarket. So language is actually essential. If I had to do it again, I would come with way more Spanish under my belt. I'd
Okay.
come armed and dangerous.
That's a really interesting observation. When we first moved, we went via Holland, but we ended up in France for best part of 2 years. And I'm reasonably proficient in French. And even so, you don't make contact and friends with the locals. They're not really interested. And we do a lot of sport. I cycle and I play golf and, we out there, but we find that you end up mixing with expats. Certainly in Portugal, my wife is busy trying to learn Portuguese, and we find that the locals, especially on the Algarve where we are, all speak English because it's such a touristy destination.
Yes.
And when you try and speak Portuguese to them, they immediately switch to English, and which is quite frustrating for people who speak reasonably good Portuguese. But I guess that's just, one of the things, and that's why a lot of expats tend to hang together. We have a big English community, a very big Swedish community, and they tend to hang together. And a place like a golf club where we play tends to be where people meet and they do things together and so on. So it is quite helpful. But believe me, I fully understand what you're saying about being lonely. And we spent part of the time in 21 in France during COVID as well, and if it wasn't for each other, we would have gone mad. So that's certainly something that one has to take into account when you make this decision. But as you say, you'd come armed with more Spanish. But
I definitely would come, with more Spanish in my arsenal. But also at the same time, I mean, my poor husband spent like 2 years on Duolingo, and he was very chuffed with himself, and arrived here, and it's kind of, you're not equipped from Duolingo to actually string a sentence together when you get here, because I mean, how when you go and you need to do real things, you need to go to the town hall and register yourself as a resident of the area, and you need to set up a bank account, and you need to register yourself for this and register yourself for that, and sign on for an electricity bill. You don't learn any of that when you're doing Duolingo. No one teaches you how to have those conversations. So as much as you may have a vocab of 1,000 words, you just don't know how to put them together.
That is so true. And I think that's the one thing I can say, and I'm sure it'll be a theme that cuts through all of these conversations. A lot of people have this view in South Africa, when the rubbish hits the fan, we'll go. And people think, especially people with money, think that they'll just get on a plane and go, oh my word, is that a mistake? It doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
because as you say, you got to do everything from scratch.
It's very hard. And I'm a real doer. I'm a very driven person, and I'm the person, if I can't get something done, it can't be done. And I'm famous for that. I mean, one of my friends said to me once years ago, God, Shiv, you can fit a square peg into a round hole. And if you can't, no one can. And then you come here and you don't speak the language, and you're dealing with people in the government departments who are old school, who not only probably only, don't want to speak English. They also, around Spain, there's all different dialects like within the Spanish. So in Valencia, we have Valenciano. Up in Barcelona, they have Catalan. In Madrid, they speak Castellan, and they all have their own. Up at Basque, they have their own dialect. So just to kind of almost punish you, they don't just answer you in full-on Spanish. They speak to you in Valenciano at about 500 miles an hour. So it's terrifying. So there were many days when I wept out of sheer frustration because I felt so powerless and so useless. It was very, very hard. I mean, for someone who's always in control of everything, to be so powerless was devastating.
I agree. I think I remember the days in France, and the one thing that I found, and you probably found, I don't know when you came over whether you had an address, but we found in France without an address, you could do nothing. We were fortunate that a guy in an Airbnb gave us a letter to say that we're staying there, and that helped me to open a bank account and get going. But I mean, it's a nightmare. It's not as simple as calling up Discovery or, or going to FNB or Standard Bank and just, people, they speak your language. So I have great sympathy. Just talking about Discovery, are you guys on state medical? Do you have private medical in Spain?
Well, because I am European, I have a European passport, I am entitled to, obviously, residency here in Spain as an EU citizen, as is my daughter. And we are entitled to it, but also you kind of have to sign on to the social security system to get the full benefits of the state medical. But we also couldn't get our residency unless we could prove that we had private health insurance. So we actually have both.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Yeah, we also signed up for the state health here, and we have private medical, and we found the private health to be superb in Portugal. And believe me, we tested it because my wife came over after breaking her back in France and then had another biking accident and broke her pelvis. And she spent 6 days in the private hospital here, and it was superb. Although she was taken to the state hospital, but we were able to take her to a private facility. But, things that we find very good about the state is, like, if you have a serious trauma, they will look after you big time. If you need a helicopter, they'll fly you to Lisbon if something like that happens. And it's happened to friends of ours and children and so on. So the state's very good. They're also very good with things like diabetes, which I'm unfortunately one, but I have diabetes, and the state pays for everything. Insulin, for instance, is free here.
Wow.
Because the state looks after you, which is quite a big benefit compared to South Africa. So, one has to weigh up all these things, and obviously cost of accommodation. You still have a daughter. Is she still at school?
She finished school last year, June. She finished her A-levels, and she took a gap year, and she's starting university in September of this year.
Okay, in Valencia? Or?
She's actually going to go to Madrid. How we're going to afford that, I don't know. I'm going to be selling off large wadges of the furniture we brought over in our 40-foot container to pay for her tertiary education.
Don't even go there. Oh, my word. When we went to France, we had friends who had emigrated, and they said, no, you can't get the same quality furniture, wara. We ended up going with a 40-foot container. And that 40-foot container just about got donated as it was, because we could use none of that. It was too big for the house that we were in. And we ended up, well, at least we gave it to good people who really needed it. We kept some of the stuff. But I mean...
Look, in France, you can still get beautiful furniture. In Spain, you can't. Not something that has history, and history as in where it came from, and history with you as in a piece of furniture that you loved, that was your mum's or your daughter's or your whatever. I don't regret bringing our furniture, not for 1 minute. There are certain things I do wish I'd left behind. My daughter was adamant she wanted her bed. I was adamant I was bringing my bed. We really shouldn't have. So those were foolhardy. Because, the rooms don't accommodate a king size unless you're really, really wealthy.
Absolutely.
And you can afford, Spain, I don't know about Portugal or France, but in Spain, the focus is very much on being out and about, being in cafes and restaurants and bars and socializing. There's not a whole lot of socializing that goes on at home. Bedrooms are just for sleeping in. Whereas for us in South Africa, our bedrooms are part of for me, my bedroom and my bathroom are part of my soul. They're how I function. I need light, I need sunshine, I need trees, I need birds. The Spanish way of building houses isn't like that at all. A bedroom is to accommodate a bed, and a bathroom is to get cleaned in and have a wee, like nothing else. It's very functional.
Yeah.
And so, my stuff as it is going to fit in my house come hell or high water, because my furniture for me is an extension of me, as part of my personality. So okay. I wouldn't have left it behind, even if I was told I had to. So I'm very glad I have it, purely because I'm that kind of person, and I love to decorate, and I like proper furniture. The furniture here, frankly, is absolutely crap. And everything is IKEA, cheap and cheerful. You blow it, it falls over. There's no integrity in terms of furniture here. So I find that very frustrating.
I would totally agree with you. Yeah, we have some pieces that are dear to us. Fortunately, we were able to save our king-size bed, and that still fits in our bedroom here. But the houses here are also pretty small. But as you say, it's a different lifestyle. We're fortunate on the Algarve with a lot of sun, so we do spend time outside, and we braai, and we carry on a little bit like in South Africa. Our weather is very similar to Cape Town. So the winters are wet and not so bad, but summers are beautiful and obviously very warm. So, Siobhan, just another question. Do you still go back to South Africa?
I was going back to South Africa every 3 months for the first 2.5 years, but I wound down a large portion of my business that was no longer serving me in February of last year. So I was back in February, and I was back in November, December last year.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure how soon I'll go back this year.
And would you consider going back there and living there again?
No, we just had a month there. We went home for Christmas. There's so much of it I miss. But again, I think it's really just the comfort of knowing the systems and knowing everything and the history of your life, and a life that you live like a hand in a glove kind of thing. But, a lot of what we left behind is no more. A lot of our friends have also moved. Jess hankered after her school desperately, but, the kids have all matriculated and they're all in university, be it in Joburg or Cape Town or what have you. So everything has fragmented and is no longer what it was. So to be hankering for something you had, it's not there anymore. I see a lot of stuff has changed in terms of there's been quite a bit of progress building-wise, but yet the place still hasn't progressed. What I did find interesting over the first 2 trips I went back, so I went back when we left in July 2021, I went back in the November and then again the following March. Stuff that I got used to, when they do roadworks and stuff in South Africa and they put hazard tape around the drains or what have you, and then they never finish the job and then there's a hole in the road for 2.5 years, you stop seeing it. And then when I went back the first time, I was like, wow, the roads are in a heap. Why is everything such a mess? Why haven't they filled that hole? Why is this? And the stuff you're so used to when you live there. But I mean, here in Spain, the taxes are high, but you actually see where your tax money is going. So there was an accident on the corner of our road, and within a week, everything was fixed, and there were new boulders up, and there was new safety this and precaution that and speed bump that. Everything was just sorted. I mean, nothing takes longer than 2 weeks to do here. So the disheveledness of Johannesburg became very apparent, and I didn't enjoy going back to that.
Okay.
There was so much load shedding, so you almost couldn't function. The streets at night, I felt, were still quite apocalyptic. Obviously, remember back to COVID when the roads were empty, everything was dark and quiet, no one went out. It's still a lot like that in Johannesburg. I mean, after 8 o'clock, the streets are desolate. And I don't know if it's fear or crime or the blackouts, what have you, but I found it quite eerie and not comfortable, not something I enjoyed driving in and being in. I have to say, it is lovely to go back and see all the beautiful African faces and the African smiles and the joy and the laughter with having so little. That side of it, like the Africanness, that warms my heart. But do I want to be a part of it? No, thank you very much.
Okay, that's a great observation. I think we haven't been back, so I have no idea. Our children all live overseas. I bar one, my son is still in South Africa, but our kids all live in Europe and America. So we rather spend time flying around Europe and going to America to see them than going back to South Africa. But I think
I'm a firm believer we've made this giant leap, and therefore one has to go forward. You can't keep going back.
Absolutely agree with you. I always say the one thing you can't do when you make this move is you can't look over your shoulder and say, oh, if it doesn't work out, we'll go back, because it won't work out in that case. So you've got to have a firm belief in what you're doing.
It's not an option because it's such a massive investment, and you can't just waste money willy-nilly back and forthing. You have to say, we've done this. and we're going to stick to our guns. That's the one reason we didn't go to the UK or Ireland, because, I mean, Wayne said, no, I'll go wherever you are, I'll be happy. And I said, but you won't be happy. It's such a massive wrench that we're going to make. It's such a huge, huge thing to leave behind everything we know, that you have to be happy, because you can't go there and be miserable. I mean, you'll die out of the sunshine.
Absolutely.
And it isn't enough just to have each other. It's a terribly romantic notion, but it actually isn't enough. You know, when you come from South Africa, where you've had such a big life, such a full life, where your home is full every weekend with friends of your child or friends of your own or family, and then you have all this nothingness, there's just the two of you. It's not enough. So you need to be happy, because something's got to carry you through, because it's really, really hard.
Mm-hmm. If I can ask you one last question, if you have to give advice to somebody who's considering emigrating, what would be maybe one or two things that you would say you would have done differently?
Well, if you're going to a country where you don't speak the language, obviously do your homework. Have as much of the language in your pocket to help you as possible, because it's really, really hard. Hang in there. It is hard. And everyone who's ever left South Africa has had it as hard as you're going to have it. You're not alone. You will cry. You will wonder if you've made the right choice. And just hang in there. You know, I miss a lot. But when I think of how much there is for us to still see and explore and do, missing people at this stage just kind of has to be put on hold, because you just have to seize this experience. We have one life. We've made the move for a reason. Just seize it, make the most of it, enjoy every day of it, and just put your big girl panties on. It's bloody hard, but it's worth it in the end.
Oh, well, that's fantastic advice. I totally agree with you. I think the one other thing, I mean, this is an adventure. I think we're not young. We didn't come here with jobs and so on. So for me, you know, it kind of gave me a new lease on life as well, in terms of this is something completely different. We're a small minority of people to have done this, but it is a real adventure. And I guess the one thing that stands out for us living in Europe and living where we are now is really the safety aspect. I cannot emphasize that enough, how good it is never to look over your shoulder because you're worried about somebody physically threatening. There's crime everywhere, but you never feel that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. That is absolutely, I mean, the sense of safety. I mean, we had our horrible experience, and thereafter we were still in our home for 3 years afterwards. And even at night, when I went out with the dogs to do their nighttime toilet, I would be in the garden thinking, I wonder if there's anyone at the fence looking. I wonder if anyone's watching me. And I would literally go out and run back in as fast as possible. And with palpitations, you know, and then every bang and woof, you're just completely and utterly beside yourself. I mean, that only happens when you've had, obviously, a traumatic experience. I never felt that way beforehand. So it changes after that, you know, and you think people are silly to up and run and leave, you know, after these kind of things, but it's life-changing. Some of you are able to pull through it, some of you can't. I tried really hard and I couldn't get past it. And so here, literally overnight, when we got here, and we hung a few pictures and things, and we heard a crash in the night, and my husband's radio was like, oh, what was that? I said, oh, just a picture falling off the wall. It's just the wind banging outside. Like, you know, there's no one in your garden. You know, there's nobody trying to come and get you. And even the one night here, then the dogs eventually arrived, and they were restless. I kept them in the side the first couple of nights, and they were restless. So I took them out at 3:30 in the morning, and I was sitting outside and looked at my watch, and I wondered, like, what time was it? I was like, it's 3:30 in the morning. So I can't believe I'm sitting out in the garden at 3:30 in the morning, and I'm not terrified out of my skin sitting here. I mean, and the fence was a hedge. There's no wire, there's no metal, there's no electric fencing. The barrier around the garden was a freaking conifer hedge all the way around that anyone could get through if they wanted. And I was so peaceful and calm, and I'm like, okay, this is what it's all about.
Well, I must say we have the same. I mean, we were also at home invasion in 2006, and it stays with you forever. And we cycle, and you know, we see women on their own walking and cycling, and just never feel threatened. And we often laugh because our house literally can't lock. Our doors, if we go away, we put down the shutters. But at night, our sliding doors can't even lock. So, anybody can walk in here. But you never get that feeling that, oh, my goodness, we didn't lock the doors. Or
No,
we so
and if you
often
find you
leave
haven't locked the door, you don't panic and there's no angst.
No, exactly. And the car doors we leave open, the cars outside. And so that sense of security makes up for a lot of the negative.
I mean, our daughter, 17 years old she was, she's 19 now, but she fell asleep on her way home from the city. It wasn't late at night. I think it was midnight or what have you. Anyway, Wayne went to fetch her from the station and she'd fallen asleep. And he phoned her and like, where are you? And she said, oh, sorry, Daddy, I fell asleep on the metro. Everyone got off and just left her there. She was fast asleep on the train. The train had stopped for the night. It had done the last shift. And like no one bothered her, harassed her, mugged her. She was just left asleep peacefully.
That is unbelievable. Oh, my word.
Wow. Then you think, okay, I have peace of mind. My child is safe, which is basically why we made the move. I was hijacked and held up and broken into several times in my life before I had a child. And you leather up emotionally and you soldier on through it and you go, oh, that's just part of living in South Africa. But once we had a daughter, once I got held up for me having a child, it was game over. When you find yourself in a position where you cannot fulfill your one role in life as a parent, and that is to protect your child through anything and everything, when you find yourself incapable of doing that because you're at the hands of someone else, it just changes absolutely everything.
Totally understand, and I totally agree.
The move was for her, and we're just along for the ride.
Yeah. But
very expensive ride, I have to tell you. My God.
That's for sure. Europe is not cheap, but it's a good ride, and I agree with you. There's so much to see and do and experience here. So
there is, and I mean, I've often said now to people, like, even if South Africa sorted out all its nonsense and crap tomorrow, sorry, excuse my language, but I wouldn't go back in a hurry just because it's all better, because we're here now. We're at the doorstep of a whole new world, and we have to embrace every minute of it. Ultimately, yes, maybe we'll go home to Highveld, but I don't know. I don't think so.
I think we've kind of said this is our last move. We're gonna stick it out here, and we'll take what comes. So one's got to just do that. One's just got to embrace what you've got around you and enjoy the place, and it's fantastic. So, Siobhan, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time, and it was really good to chat to you.
I mean, I hope I've answered your questions and didn't ramble on too much.
Absolutely. No, that was absolutely superb. Exactly the way I wanted it to go, and I really thank you. Thanks very much for joining me.
Absolute pleasure, my love.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed hearing about our experience of relocating from South Africa, why not subscribe to the show so you can hear more from people who have left South Africa for a better future abroad? Thanks, and until next time.